That was real, and something like it happens along this coast almost every single day. The animal that just twisted away from those jaws is a gray seal, and it is barely a few months old. It has been swimming for only a matter of weeks, and already it has learned the first and hardest rule of the open ocean. Down there, in the blue, something is always hungry, and it is almost always bigger than you. But here is the part that surprises people. Because to understand how that young seal ended up out there, alone, in deep water with a great white shark rising underneath it, you have to go all the way back to the beach where it was born, and to a goodbye that happens faster and colder than almost anywhere else in the entire animal world. Because this seal was not born in the sea, it was born on land, on a wind-blasted beach, or a slab of cold rock right at the edge of the water. And when it was born, it could not swim, not a single stroke. It came into the world wrapped in a soft white coat of fur that drinks up water like a sponge, a coat that would drag it straight to the bottom if it ever tried to swim in it. So for the first weeks of its life, the sea, the one place it is built for, is the one place it cannot go. Instead, it does exactly one thing. It drinks. And its mother's milk is something close to a miracle. More than half of it is pure fat, some of the richest milk produced by any animal on Earth. And the pup balloons, it can very nearly double its body weight in a couple of weeks, turning all of that milk into a thick, heavy blanket of blubber, because that blubber is the only thing that is going to keep it alive through what happens next. And she does not leave gently. One ordinary day, usually only 2 or 3 weeks in, long before the pup can swim, long before it has ever caught a single fish, she simply turns, slides back into the sea, and does not come back. No lessons, no hunting trips, no goodbye, nothing at all. She has poured every ounce she can spare into this one pup. And now, as far as the ocean is concerned, she is finished. And from that moment on, the pup is completely, utterly alone. Sit with that for a second. Here is a land animal that cannot swim, cannot hunt, and has just been abandoned right at the edge of the single most dangerous place on the planet for a creature like it. It has exactly one thing going for it: the wall of fat its mother built into its body, and a countdown that has already started ticking. So it waits. It sheds that useless baby fur patch by patch, and grows in its first real coat, sleek, dense, waterproof, gray, and the whole time it is living off itself, burning through that blubber, getting thinner and hungrier and lighter, day after day, alone on a cold beach, staring at the water, until one gray morning, the hunger finally gets louder than the fear, and it hauls its body down across the sand to the very edge of the waves, to the thing it was made for and has never ever touched, and it goes in. Nobody shows it how. There is nobody left to show it anything. The first time it pushes its face beneath the surface, and the cold closes over the top of its head. Every nerve in its body is screaming at it to stop. But something older and deeper is stronger than the fear. It kicks, it sinks, it scrambles back up to the air in a panic. And then it does the bravest thing a small animal can do. It tries again, and again, and again. And here is the strange, quiet magic of it. In the space of just a few days, this clumsy, top-heavy land animal becomes something else entirely. Because its body was a submarine the whole time, hidden inside a seal, it can slow its own heartbeat down to a crawl. It can shut off the blood to almost everything except its brain and its heart. It can fold its ribs and sink into the dark and simply stay there, silent, for long minutes on a single held breath. All of that was already inside it. It just had to find it, on its own with nobody watching. But learning to dive means learning to go down into the deep blue where the sunlight finally gives out, and the deep blue is exactly where the danger lives. Because a young gray seal has a shadow it can never quite see. Below it, cruising through that cold, dim water, are some of the most flawless hunters the ocean has ever produced. Great white sharks, and a great white does not chase, it waits. It hangs back in the gloom, and it watches the small dark silhouette of a seal pressed against the bright ceiling of the surface, far above, and then it rises, straight up, out of the dark, faster than anything that size should ever be able to move. The young seal cannot outmuscle that. It cannot outlast it. There is exactly one thing it can do, and it has a fraction of a second to do it, turn, because a seal in its own element is impossibly unbelievably agile, and a shark that commits to a strike from below cannot correct if it misses. So it all comes down to a single heartbeat and a full body twist, the exact desperate move you saw in the very first seconds of this film. Most of the time, incredibly, it works, and the handful of times it does not are a big part of the reason that so many seal pups never live to see their first year. And the sharks are not the only shadow out there. Further from shore, where the coast falls away into deep open water, travel the ocean's other great hunters, killer whales, orcas, and unlike the shark, they do not come alone. They hunt as a family, in near silence, talking to one another in clicks and calls the seal will never understand, spreading out, cutting off the escape, working a single young seal the way a wolf pack works a deer across open ground. Against coordination like that, one small animal has almost no chance in open water. So the young seal learns something that sounds backwards, that the safest place is often the one that looks the most dangerous. The churning shallows, the jagged rocks, the pounding surf that is far too violent and too shallow for a whale to follow it into. It learns, in other words, that sometimes staying alive means swimming straight toward the storm instead of away from it. And there are the storms themselves. Out here the weather is not a backdrop. It is a force that can pin a young seal against the rocks, tear it off a haul-out ledge, or hold it under in water gone white and wild. It has to learn to read the sea's mood as well as its own hunger, to know when to ride it out on land, and when the water, for all its monsters, is the safer bet. And underneath every bit of it runs that same patient clock, hunger. Because the blubber is nearly gone now, and there is still no one bringing it food, it has to learn to catch fish, fast, flashing, slippery fish, with no coaching, no practice, and an empty, aching stomach. Its first 100 attempts are failures. It lunges and comes up with nothing. It chases shapes that vanish. And a pup that burns through the last of its fat before it works this out simply gets slower and colder and quietly fades away in the deep. But slowly, through the fear and the failures and the near misses down in the dark, something begins to click. It learns to read the silver flash of a fish before the fish even knows it's there. It learns the drop-offs and the currents where they gather. It learns to hang absolutely still in the blue and let the sea carry its dinner to it. And one cold, ordinary afternoon it turns its head in a blur and comes up with its first real catch, clumsy and lucky, and completely its own. And that changes everything, because the whole brutal point of that early goodbye, the reason the mother could turn and leave so impossibly soon, is this: a gray seal was never meant to be taught. It was meant to be built and loaded with fat and dropped into the deep end of the hardest classroom on earth and expected to teach itself or disappear. It is one of the loneliest, most unforgiving childhoods in all of nature, and the ones that make it come out the far side as something genuinely formidable. An animal that can dive hundreds of feet into the black, that can hold its breath far longer than you ever could, that can cross miles of open, freezing ocean, that shares the water every single day of its life with the very predators built to hunt it, and simply keeps on living anyway. The sea never gets safer for it. The sharks never leave. The cold never once softens. It just learns slowly to live inside all of it, alone from the very beginning, exactly the way it always had to. And that young seal, the one that twisted away from those jaws in the opening seconds of this story, is out there right now, somewhere off a gray, wind-torn coast, sliding back down into the same blue water that has tried to kill it 100 times over, alive, because with no one to help it and everything against it, it taught itself how. So if this story stayed with you, subscribe. There is a new wild survival story here every week, and tell me honestly in the comments, could you have taught yourself to survive completely alone at only a few weeks old? Because somewhere out there tonight, in the cold and the dark, one small seal just did.